Alan Scott, The Green Lantern #1, is the first chapter of a story that, frankly, has been a long time coming. Much like the Wesley Dodds' The Sandman title that made its debut a couple of weeks ago, this book is going to take us back to the 1940s and show us what Alan Scott's life was like during the war as the original Green Lantern. But unlike the Wesley Dodds book, this book will show us Alan Scott living as a gay man and what that's like for him. This whole retcon of Alan Scott being a gay man was originally started in 2012 when an alternate universe version of Alan Scott was revealed to be gay, and that paved the way for the canonical Alan Scott being made into a gay man. As such, why it took so long for us to get a story about Alan Scott living as a gay man in the 40s is a little bit of a mystery to me, as it seems kind of obvious. But I'm hoping it was just a matter of finding the right story with the right team at the right place at the right time, which it feels like they've done here. It feels like this Alan Scott The Green Lantern book is going to be something special. This book also reveals to us an unseen wrinkle in Alan Scott's dynamic with the Justice Society of America early on, as well as what his dynamic was like with J. Edgar Hoover. It wasn't good, folks. I wouldn't call Alan Scott The Green Lantern #1 a feel-good comic book per se, but it does feel good to have this kind of queer visibility in mainstream superhero comic books. So if that's your thing, I highly recommend this issue.
Alan Scott, The Green Lantern #2 is the kind of superhero comic that makes you think, which is a good thing. But in this case, it's also kind of unsettling. Or at least it's unsettling if you care about people. In this issue, we flash back to the late 30s, where we see that Alan Scott has checked himself into Arkham Asylum to treat his homosexuality. Once there, he's checked into a deviant wing, where we get a small glimpse of what happens to queer individuals in this facility in the name of treatment. This book really gave me pause and prompted me to think about the fact that this is how queer people were treated in this country openly not that long ago, really. If you want to go down the rabbit hole even further, how many queer people are still treated this way, not just in this country on perhaps a little bit more of a discrete basis, but around the world? To what extent is this kind of thing still going on? Yeah, I've become pretty heavily invested in this Alan Scott The Green Lantern book pretty quickly. I mean, it's only been 2 issues. It feels like this story is saying something important, and I hope that people are listening.
We are broadcasting today from my car in beautiful Ames, Iowa, God's country, where it is just now starting to snow on the day after Christmas. We're talking today about seeing a softer side of God's spirit of vengeance, the Spectre, in Alan Scott The Green Lantern #3. Alan Scott teams up with not only the Spectre, Jim Corrigan, but the Flash, Jay Garrick, in this issue, and we see that they are both definitively LGBTQIA+ allies, even though that term most definitely did not exist in the 1940s. Naturally, with the Spectre being here, we dive into the more spiritual dimension of Alan Scott's homosexuality, and homosexuality in general, and we get a really touching conversation between Alan Scott and Jim Corrigan.
This is the second issue to come out in less than 2 weeks, the other one being Wonder Woman #4, which was released last week, to talk about homosexuality and religion and spirituality. And I like that. I like it a lot, actually. It's a place that superhero stories don't normally go.
It actually makes me feel like DC is becoming a more mindful, inclusive place for queer readers. Which isn't to say that it was not mindful or inclusive before, but we haven't seen content like this in a long time, if ever.
We learn the horrifying, and in our hero's case, heartbreaking, origin story of the Red Lantern in Alan Scott The Green Lantern #4. So remember that at this point on the DC Comics timeline, Alan Scott is the only Green Lantern on Earth. It was a simpler time. Nonetheless, this book makes a point to incorporate elements from the multicolored emotional spectrum, which was established as part of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern Corps mythos in, I believe, the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's nice to have that connective tissue there, even though I don't think our author Tim Sheridan or anyone involved with this book actually originated it. The best thing that this book has going for it, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the connection that it's made between its main characters and its audience. Full disclosure, I'm a straight, cisgendered man. So there are struggles and elements that come with being queer and being a part of that LGBTQI+ community that, even though I consider myself an ally, I'm really never going to understand on an intimate level. But what I really appreciate about this book is that it kind of takes you there. I can't identify with what it's like to be queer, but I can identify with what it's like to look at yourself and ask, is there something wrong with me? There's something different about me. Do I need to change that? Do I need to do something to fit in better with the world around me? And that's a powerful sentiment and a powerful connection to make with your audience. And it's really what makes this Alan Scott book memorable, at least to me. Body language is an important thing in the world of comic books. Pay attention to the body language between Alan Scott and the Red Lantern in this issue, particularly during the more quiet, I guess, intimate moment that we see. It's compelling.